city of Philly, where the birds take flight. Eagle swag on the rise each and every night. Tone and Markus got the scoop ready to ignite. From the lanes of South Street to the Broad Street lights. Dashing like a running back, hitting every play. 9 guys in the zone, never led astray. Talking touchdowns, talking game day. Huddle around the mic, hear what they gotta say. Fly like an eagle soars in the sky. Tone and Markus always standing by. Bringing their heat, call it do or die. Philly squad, hear the battle cry. Fly like an eagle soars in the sky. Tone and Markus always standing by. Bringing their heat, call it do or die. Philly squad, hear the battle cry.
What up? What up? Welcome back to another edition of the Eagles Offseason Show. I'm joined by none other than the man, the myth, the absolute legend, Coach Markus from Pro Fan Talk. And I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II from Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge us to the game. Always a pleasure to be in the presence of the beautiful people. Markus, talk to me. How you feeling, big dog?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's another week closer to the draft. We 20 days away now?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's been flying, man. So now we're going to really get down to the nitty-gritty. Enough with the visits, enough with the prognostications. Now people are really going to start making moves and positioning themselves to see what's going to happen in this draft. Of course, everything is still up in the air, but everybody loves to guess. So there's that. I jumped into the rabbit hole of the mock draft today. Truly did about 2 or 3 of them this morning. Just I didn't do any trades. I just let the computer pick and had some arched eyebrows a couple times, and a couple times I just threw some things out because I was like, well, that ain't gonna happen. So but it's fun to watch it. Now I'm really starting to do homework. Really starting to get in and look at evaluations and trying to, get some highlights and watch some games and stuff like that. So really trying to get educated, man. But I got one more hurdle this afternoon. We got the women's national championship game tonight at 3. And Dawn Staley is going for the repeat, trying to beat UConn and Paige Beckers. So should be a good one, man. And once I get over that hurdle, it'll be all about the draft, man. So
yeah. I wanted to ask you a question as far as the draft goes. Shout out to Dawn Staley as well, Philly native. I wanted to ask you a question about the draft, especially when it comes to draft history. Is there a particular draft pick that you can think of, for yourself at least, where you had relatively reasonable to high expectations for that player and they just did not pan out in any shit, way, or form? Is there any draft pick that you could think of that you liked personally, but he just didn't amount to anything you expected?
Not really, honestly, because
so there's nobody you liked, and then they just let you down. Like, he didn't become that guy like I thought he would.
I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I really didn't get into like studying the draft and studying players, but within like the past 4 or 5 years. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing the podcast and talking to guys like you, I realized I had to do my homework. But before then, it was like a passing thing. I would do mock drafts and stuff like that, but I'm not doing nowhere near the homework and the investigations of all of these players like I'm doing now. I just wasn't interested into it like that. It was very passing. I just like, all right, let's get to the excitement of the draft, who they gonna pick, and let's go with it. I do like who was that? Dank Jin Woo said JJ Arthur-Whiteside, because when they drafted him, I was like, that dude's got good size. That dude, both his parents were Olympians. He can jump out the gym. They can do some things with him. And then they didn't. And it's like, okay, he's not going to be your next Julio Jones, but he is somebody you can throw the ball up high in the corner of the end zone and let him go up on somebody and dunk with 2 hands. That's what he's made for. They just didn't do that. And then he went to Seattle, and it was like you saw he was what he was. So it was a lot of stuff like that. I did think somebody brought up Derek Barnett. I thought Derek Barnett would be better, but Derek Barnett is far from what I would consider a bust. Far from that. So there's some guys here and there. I kind of jumped on the Jalen Reagor bandwagon early because I went and watched his workout, and I was like, 4.2? I was like, even if they got it wrong, that means he's still in the 4.3s. So that's ridiculously fast. And of course, it turned out the way it turned out. So it's only been recently, the last 4 or 5 years, that I've actually dug and really got my hands dirty in what's going on in the game and stuff like that. So I just like to look at it from the standpoint of what they're doing now. And once because to me, the evaluation doesn't start till you get into camp anyways. So,
right.
I mean, just to pull one out of the sky, I thought Anthony Richardson would be at least good at the very least. I thought, his floor was that he would be an average quarterback. But you see how these things work out, man. And it just goes to show that the personality of some of these kids is the key factor that people are missing. I always make that joke about Anthony Richardson. That dude has an absolute cannon 4R. Guidance system not included. Like he's just not been accurate. And then of course you got leadership qualities and stuff like that, stuff like that don't come out on tape. I come from the era, right. Me and Brandon Whiting was talking about this the other night, where when we went to the combine, we didn't do interviews. Only the projected, top 10 or 20 picks did quote unquote interviews. And an interview was where you just went and talked to some of the people in the team. It's nothing like what they do now, where they going over schemes with you, and then you got to go and do a faux media interview, and they give you the mic and you talking with somebody from NFL. They didn't have all of that type of stuff. It was very streamlined. It was very matter of fact. I told the story. Robert Smith was my roommate at the combine. I saw him once, because we all knew he was going to be a top draft pick.
Right.
So I saw him once when I checked in the hotel. We said what's up to each other. Yeah, my boy D Graff. I'm from Ohio. I'm from Cincinnati and all that kind of stuff. We do some common people, that sort of thing. And then he was out. I ain't see him no more. Because he really didn't have to be there. I'm sure he was there. He talked to a couple teams, and then he was out. Now it's a whole media circus. The Shield is milking that. Mm-hmm. They're going to get every last penny they can get out of that. So now more than ever, it is very important for you to do your homework and look at these players when they in the draft, because you can see how everybody's trying to spin narratives. They got this stuff with Shador, and it's like, I don't give a damn what y'all saying. I know what I saw when I watched him play, the good games and the bad games. And if anybody else had been doing that, he'd have been a top 5 pick guaranteed. He'd have been number 1 quarterback out the draft guaranteed. So it kind of goes back to everybody's trying to spin stuff. Everybody want to try to act like they know everything, and they don't. But this is where it comes down to, we praise Howie for this all the time, because it has been shown, and our track record says that Howie has done a masterful job of doing his homework. How come nobody else has been able to accomplish what he's accomplished? How does he get the recipe and nobody else get it when they all shop at the same store? They all bringing home the same groceries, but his cake tastes a whole lot better. You know what I mean? So, so saying all that to say, I'm trying to do a lot more homework now than I ever did in the past, because it's just been proven too many times that all of these guys on ESPNs and First Takes and Good Morning Footballs, they don't know shit. They just guessing like everybody else.
Yeah, some guys that I thought about as far as who I had high expectations for, that I did my due diligence on, and they ultimately just didn't pan out for a plethora of reasons. One guy that stands out to me when I think about that is John Hightower. I don't know if a lot of people remember John Hightower, but the Eagles selected John Hightower in the 2020 NFL draft, and I tell you this right now, John Hightower, he was somebody who had a lot of speed, a lot of length at the position. I think he went to Boise State, and he was a guy that just didn't have the work ethic, didn't have the. And for a guy to be drafted in the 5th round to not have work ethic, that's alarming. He was a guy that just couldn't be consistent, couldn't stay on the roster. They were always bringing him up and down on the practice squad, and Greg Ward had more work ethic than him. Greg Ward had a better NFL career than him. Greg Ward is somebody that I love, somebody who was a former quarterback turned receiver, and he made a lot of timely catches for the Eagles, was one of the most reliable guys, more reliable than Jalen Reagor. But yeah, John Hightower was somebody that really disappointed me in the Eagles uniform. Kavon Wallace, another guy from the 2020 NFL draft. Clemson. He was somebody that I thought would really, really shine in Philadelphia. His personality fit the city. I don't want to blame it on his work ethic because he was somebody that was always showing up, but he also battled some injuries as well.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't really find his way on the football field. And when he did find his way on the football field, he was constantly being taken advantage of. One game in particular, where he really was just abused was, I think it was 2020, the Eagles faced off against the San Francisco 49ers. I think it was the 2020 season. And the Eagles won the game, but he was just getting abused by George Kittle, like most people do.
Yeah.
But he was. It was unfortunate, but I think he's found his way with the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, it took him a minute. Took him a minute. He was with us for what, 3 years? Then he went to Arizona. Then he went to Tennessee. He went to Arizona and Tennessee in the same year, and then finally got with Seattle, and he's still there. So. That is a very, very nuanced conversation because there are a lot of levels to it. Sometimes it's not as simple as work ethic. Sometimes it is the coaches because we don't see how the coaches work. You would probably be surprised how many times a situation like what we had with Desai and Matt Patricia, maybe not to that degree, but that type of dysfunction probably happens more often than you think because you got too many egos that's involved. You got coaches that's been doing it one way and don't want to change. Coaches can get inundated by their contracts like everybody else. If you got a coach that's not doing a good job but knows he's not going nowhere, I don't know what his mindset is. And just like a player, personalities matter. Sometimes personalities don't match up. Sometimes schemes and talent don't vibe up. Look at when we got Nnamdi Asomugha. I thought Nnamdi was pretty damn good in Oakland.
He was.
But the way they were playing him in Oakland made sense. The same thing with
Byron Maxwell.
What's the running back we got from Dallas?
Oh, you're talking about DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray was a great downfield runner, and we got him up here. And Chip Kelly tried to pitch him outside and run out of shotgun. And I just remember that one game they lined him up. I think it may have been pistol, or he may have been in true I formation. He came downhill and he ended up going like 55 yards for a touchdown. And it's like that is not difficult to figure out. Why would you bring somebody up here like that and then try to make him do something that he's not good at doing? Stuff like that just doesn't make sense, but it continues to happen. Continues to happen. Look at Bryce Huff.
I was just about to say, if there's any mistake, if there's any notch or blemish on Vic Fangio's resume as the Eagles DC, I feel like he was a little stubborn on Bryce Huff. He was a little bullish. He was a little bullish on his scheme and what he expected from his edge rushers versus what Bryce Huff actually was good at. Bryce Huff is a guy who's good in 3-point stance, 4-point stance, hands in the dirt. That's how he gets off.
Right.
They had him standing up 2-point stance a lot in the first part of that season. And he wasn't able to generate the power. He wasn't able to generate the speed that he's used to generating. And he was constantly getting, beat by average tackles. He couldn't even beat tight ends. So it was unfortunate to see how things went for him. And again, as a coach, as a DC, you can't get everything right in the season. There's some people are going to be a casualty. I mean,
Right.
for the rest, for the rest of the roster to pick up on what Fangio needed and one guy not to, hey, it is what it is. Somebody's going to have to take their lump somewhere. But overall, though, you're right. I think the one thing we could take from this segment, from this topic that we're having right now, is fit and situations matter. And there's so many times where people just want the big name, and I think we're all guilty of it. I think we're all guilty of it to some degree because we're excited and we like the player and we would love to see how they would look in a certain situation with certain players. We start playing Madden in our minds in fantasy football. Like
Exactly.
it's exciting, right? It's exciting, but overall, scheme and fit, personalities, coaching staff, all that stuff has to go hand in glove fit. And that's one of the reasons why the Philadelphia Eagles were so successful over the past few seasons, or at least over the course of, or over the duration of the Nick Sirianni era. They've done a really great job at matching personalities, prospect personalities, with the personalities of the personnel and the coaches. They did make a mistake in 2023 with the Sean Desai, Matt Patricia thing. And I don't think the Brian Johnson issue was personality related. I just think something wasn't connecting, even though it wasn't still a top 10 offense. I think their problems were more so defensive related that bled over to the offense. But nonetheless, when you draft these guys, that's why when prospects are asked about where they could potentially be drafted, being the first quarterback or the first receiver or the first edge rusher off the board, like when I hear players kind of like say, I'm going to make those first 18 teams eat their words. I'm like, brother, for one, not even just no, you're not. For me, when I hear that, I say to myself, my man, it's more important where you go than when you go.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many guys who are drafted ahead of people and they don't have the same career. They might not have a career that's even as good as yours because you were drafted where you were supposed to go. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
exactly. Think about our draft when we were supposed to.
You can't get into that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You're fine. I was just about to finish off and say you can't get wrapped up in draft stock and when and how, it's all about where. That's why I love when people say I don't care when I go. I care about where I go.
Yeah. Is Jaden Daniels having this type of success if he doesn't go to Washington with the coaches they got right now? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Imagine if he goes to Chicago.
Imagine if is Caleb Williams better if he goes somewhere else? If he didn't have to what's his name? The one they got rid of that in Pittsburgh now. Why am I blanking on his name? Quarterback.
Just Fields.
Yes, thank you. Is Justin Fields in the same situation if he doesn't go to Chicago? If he gets with a better coach, look at all of this. Look at all of the stuff us super smart Eagles fans did when we drafted Donovan, but everybody wanted Ricky Williams, and I forget there was one worse than that. Remember what the Jets did when they passed on Warren Sapp and drafted the tight end, and it's. And everybody and their mother can see.
Hindsight is 2020, but I'm not drafting a tight end ahead of a defensive lineman.
It wasn't clearly, just like Jalen Carter was. Clearly, Warren Sapp was the best player in that draft. It wasn't even close. So then you look at, you get the best player, then it goes down to what do you need? And the Jets, just like us in the Donovan draft, the fans knew what they wanted. Mm-hmm. We were wrong. The Jets fan knew what they wanted. And then they drafted, was it Kyle Brady, I think it was? And you just, it can't be that difficult when it's that obvious. And for whatever reason, everybody always misses. Always misses. And it's like somebody's not doing their homework.
Exactly. Listen to this though. What if, hypothetically speaking, remember that 2017 draft? The Myles Garrett draft, the Leonard Fournette, the Mitchell Trubisky draft, the Deshaun Watson draft. Remember that draft?
Yep.
What if instead of choosing Mitch Trubisky, Chicago chose Patrick Mahomes at number 2? What if?
Yeah, but again,
I guess what I'm trying to say is, will we have the Mahomes we have today?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because it goes back to your point. Who's the coach?
Exactly. Matter of fact, you want to know who Mahomes would be? Because listen, Mahomes had traits that were unique, but they required refinement.
Yes.
And Caleb Williams is similar in that regard. I'm not saying Caleb Williams is Patrick Mahomes. So let's not jump out the window, you guys. But what I'm trying to say is what a lot of people raved about with Caleb Williams was these unique traits and the ability to make the sidearm throws from the awkward angles, from the unique angles, and be able to throw the ball with so much velocity and make they talked about all the sexy things as it pertains to throwing the football, right? How unique they were as football throwers. And one could argue if Mahomes doesn't get with the right head coach to refine those tools that make him special, but the foundation, the fundamentals weren't sound. If he doesn't get with Andy Reid to refine those fundamentals and hone that power, it's kind of like Cyclops. I always use Cyclops as a metaphor when I'm
going X-Men on us.
Yes, sir. I always use Cyclops from X-Men as a metaphor when it comes to unrefined ability that required focus and training from the right person. If Cyclops doesn't get with Professor X and Professor X doesn't design the goggles for him to focus his ability on particular targets and be able to turn up the intensity when need be, he'd be out here running around with the Brotherhood just knocking everybody down. But in reality, Cyclops got with the right person. Mahomes got with the right person. Andy Reid is Patrick Mahomes' Professor X, and he helped him refine that special, that uncanny ability, which is why we get the Mahomes we see today. And you saw Mahomes; he was running across the yard those first few years, throwing deep balls like the super explosive. And then as the years have gone, he's gotten significantly more tactful in his approach. This past
he knows
season,
what he can do and what he can't do.
This past season, he's been he's thrown some way more underneath throws than he has in his career. He's had to really be methodical marching down the football field. And I think that's the true growth in the quarterback, when you don't rely so much on the explosive, where you can actually methodically move your way down the football field. And first and 10, second and 5. Oh, we had a loss. Now we're at 3rd and 8. Okay, can you convert? We need 9 yards. You get 10, right? Like, I think those are some of the best quarterbacks. They can get you exactly what you need, and then when it's there, they can take the top off. And that's who Mahomes has been. Especially,
think about it like this: every quarterback can do that. In my opinion, every quarterback can do that. Any quarterback that gets drafted can do that. It's all about can a coach put together the right scheme. But
don't you believe there are some guys that they just can't play? They just can't make it to the level.
Absolutely. But even the guys that can't play, they had to get there for some reason. Even if you throw the ball 5 yards downfield, how many people throw them 5-yard slants and end up throwing for 250 yards in the game at the end of the day? It's up to the coach to get the most out of whatever it is that you got. It's almost like, to every quarterback is a muscle car. It's a hot rod, right? You're not going to learn how to drive a hot rod and you live in a 35-mile-an-hour suburb. who's smart enough to take it to the track to figure out what it can do, what it can't do, how it handles going down around the curves, how the braking is. In my opinion, a lot of coaches don't do that. They just want to take whatever they got and just stick it in there. Again, it's like making that cake. You got to understand if you got the right ingredients. If you don't have the right ingredients, figure out what you do have the ingredients for.
So you're saying, because I think I agree with you on this. If I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying more teams fail players than players fail teams.
I think it's yes. I think it's almost 50-50. I think it's almost 50-50. Is Patrick Mahomes if Travis Kelce isn't there?
That's a good point.
If Chris Jones isn't there? So the other part of that is, well, yes, it's a lot on the quarterback, but look at what happened look at what we did to the Chiefs because of Caliendo. We love Andy Reid. Andy Reid is one of the best in the business to ever do it. How come he made that mistake? That was a critical error.
Critical.
That was and everybody knew it.
But here, it's funny you say that because
figure it out.
That's an error Jeff Stoutland would never make. Jeff Stoutland doesn't believe in fixing one position to sacrifice two. Jeff Stoutland, that's one thing he's firmly against. He will never, if he's missing a left tackle or a left guard or whoever's missing, he would never sacrifice one position. He would never sacrifice two positions to fix one.
Right.
He would never do that. And the only way he would do it is if he truly had somebody that was competent. The one game that comes into mind where they actually tried to fix one position and I guess sacrifice two, but it worked out well because they trust the personnel, is when Cam Jurgens couldn't start the NFC Championship game at the back.
Landon Dickerson.
They moved Landon Dickerson to center.
Yep.
Now he played center in college.
2 years at Georgia, right? Or Bama?
No, he was at Florida State. Then he went to Bama.
2 years at Bama, he played.
So they moved him from left guard to center, and they put Tyler Steen at left guard. Tyler Steen is a competent guard, very competent. So you feel comfortable enough to do that, right? But the Chiefs, on the other hand, who was it? It was. They had Joe Thuney at left guard, and they lost at left tackle during the season. And then they moved, and then they were dealing with it for a while, seeing if the backup left tackle can do his job. He couldn't, so they moved Thuney to left tackle, and they put Caliendo at left guard, elevated him.
I thought Thuney played on the right though, on the right side. I could be wrong.
Thuney's a left guard.
Okay.
And their starting left tackle got hurt, and then they thought, okay, let's elevate the backup left tackle. He should be able to hold it. He should be able to hold his water. He couldn't. Eventually, throughout the season, they moved Thuney to the left tackle, and they moved up Caliendo to left guard. And they were doing okay until they ran into the right demon. That is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Correct.
So, the bottom line is, though, you guys, it's not when you're drafted, it's where you're drafted to, and so many of these situations matter. You can get them like I'm of the mindset it's kind of 60-40 a little bit. More teams fail players than players fail teams. Now that's not to exclude the work ethic and the dedication required from the athlete.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys, they made it to this level for a reason. And why they didn't realize their potential, could it be injury, right? Could it be work ethic on their part? Could it be the coaches didn't put them in the right situation? Could it be they don't have the right people developing these guys in whatever building you want to choose? It's so many variables that go into it that goes into why a player doesn't realize their potential. But what we've noticed is that the Philadelphia Eagles, especially in the 2024 season, they've done a phenomenal job at employing the right people, the right personnel to develop the guys that they wanted, the guys they evaluated in the draft. And I want to bring something to your attention because I think this is really important. This kind of goes in line with what we talked about last week on the show, because I think you were on the side of, you're always you tread lightly with top 30 visits. You know, you don't really put too much stock into them because I can't remember the exact reason, but you ultimately said that you just don't put too much stock into it. You don't put all your eggs in that basket, which I think is a reasonable assessment of what you said. But I think this is an important note as it pertains to the Philadelphia Eagles and top 30 visits. Prior to the 2023 NFL Draft, the Eagles hosted Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, and Keely Ringo on top 30 visits. Prior to the 2024 Draft, the Eagles
Wait a minute. That was it? That's it?
Well, I'm talking about the ones
amongst others. Okay.
Amongst others.
Gotcha, okay.
Those are the ones they drafted amongst the ones they didn't. But yeah, so 2023 they hosted Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, and Keely Ringo on top 30 visits. Prior to the 2024 NFL Draft, the Eagles hosted Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Hunt, Anaya Smith, and Johnny Wilson on top 30 visits. That means 56.3% of the Philadelphia Eagles draft picks in each of the last 2 seasons had top 30 visits with the team.
They stopped by.
Which also means 100% of Philadelphia's first 3 draft picks in each of the last 2 seasons had top 30 visits with the team. So I can't speak for other organizations, but when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, they use these top 30 visits not only as a way to get these guys on the field or get these guys in the medical room or whatever, but I think they take, because the Eagles take personality and character very seriously. Howie Roseman was just on, I believe, Todd McShay's podcast and mentioned how we will not draft anybody who has a history of abuse to women. We don't care how good he is. We don't care how talented or what. We're not drafting him, period.
You know what? I don't disagree, but I wish he didn't say it.
Yeah, I don't think that's something you put out there. I don't think it's wise to draw your line in public. You draw your line behind closed doors.
Number one, you're locking yourself in the corner, and number two, the way people try to pull receipts in with social media, and they'll bring up something that happened when he was a freshman in college, and maybe he was exonerated, or a lot of times the story doesn't get told until after the fact. We left somebody out of the Super Bowl in 22 because of that.
And it also puts you in a corner, and people start to virtue signal to you, and they say, okay, so well, this person can do this, but what about this guy? Jalen Carter, blah 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 blah. But you're okay with this? Like, it's people. I personally don't think it's important to draw your line in public.
Yeah, you didn't have to do that.
You didn't have to do that, but
because you put your neck on the noose when you do that.
Exactly. Now, granted, it didn't become tantalizing news. It didn't grow legs, but it's just something that I noticed.
Yeah, because I guarantee you, somebody's waiting and doing homework just so they can bring that back up and throw it in his face. I guarantee you. That to me, that's what scares me the most, because they'll go back and look at everybody, and to your point, well, what about this? Well, this was worse than that, and it opens a Pandora box that we didn't need.
Yeah. So, as far as these top 30 visits, the reason I bring all that up is the Eagles do their due diligence when it comes to evaluating and doing the science on their future investments. And that's where Big Dom comes in. Big Dom has a line on the black market. He can get all the information he needs. Big Dom will find out what's going on.
Yes.
Big Dom has been a linchpin. He's been the tipping force in players who've stayed and players who have not stayed. Correct. You know what I mean? Big Dom is somebody who does the science, does the work, does the diligence. And the Philadelphia Eagles have been one of the best organizations, one of the top organizations as it pertains to people finding, empowering people, evaluating personality and fit and whatnot. Overall. I mean, you because we're humans, we miss, right? People mislead us. Sometimes you overvalue certain things, but overall, the Philadelphia Eagles have been an astounding organization when it comes to the people business. When it comes to coaches, they don't have a single coach on. in the Jeff Lurie era, they don't have a single coach they don't have a single coach on their docket who hasn't had a winning season. Even Chip Kelly had 2 seasons back to back where he won 10 games. You know what I'm saying? They don't have a single coach on the docket, on the resume that hasn't had a winning season. So that says something. And I can't even think of a player in recent memory. I saw this chart actually that came out recently that the Philadelphia Eagles have one of the lowest rates of players who've been caught up in legal situations or who've been suspended and whatnot. I can't remember where I saw it. I think I saw it on Twitter or something, but the Philadelphia Eagles do a pretty good job at evaluating the person. And that's where those top 30 visits come in. And so far, over the past 2 seasons at least, they've done the homework on a lot of these guys that we love and that are near and dear to our hearts. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Quinyon, Mitchell Cooper, DeJean, guys like that. They've done the science. And, we'll see where it goes. But now that brings me to some of the top 30 visits that happened recently, right? We can recap the previous top 30 visits, and then we'll get into the current top 30 visits that just happened as of late. So just to remind you guys, the Eagles have hosted offensive tackle Jalen Travis out of Iowa State, offensive lineman Marcus Baun out of Purdue, offensive tackle Josh Connolly out of Oregon, offensive lineman Anthony Belton out of North Carolina State, offensive tackle Charles Grant out of William & Mary University, guard Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State, running back Jaden Blue out of Texas, cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, edge rusher Elijah Roberts out of SMU, edge rusher Donovan Izuruku out of Boston College, edge Tyler Barron out of Miami, edge Olufemi Oladipo out of UCLA. Those are the previous guys. Now, as far as the most recent names that they brought in, the most recent names, we have guard Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia. And we're going to more so tap into the new guys. Guard Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia. Cornerback Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State. Cornerback Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. Edge rusher Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M.
I had him on one of my mocks this morning.
And interior defensive lineman Shamar Turner out of
He's
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So you say you had Nick Scourton and Shamar Turner pop up on your mock draft today, right?
Yeah.
All right, so walk me through your thoughts on some of these guys, starting with the guys that you had in your mock draft. Like, what's your thoughts on Nick Scourton? Your thoughts on interior D lineman Shamar Turner?
I'm trying to see if I still got it up.
Because I look at these guys.
That's a different ones. I got that guy from this one. My second pick was Princely, the guy from Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, yeah. I drafted him in my first mock draft in the second round. It's funny.
See, this one was I ended up getting Tyleik Williams from Old State. So I first go through, and the first thing I look at is size.
Yeah. Let's do that. What's your process when you look at some of these guys?
I'm looking at size. Like, for instance, if I'm looking at a safety or a DB, I need a DB that's at least 5'10". I don't want nobody that's 5'9" and below.
Correct.
I need somebody that's 5'10", preferably 6 foot. If you a safety, I want you 6'2", because the wide receivers are just continuing to getting taller. So that's the first thing I'm looking at. If I'm looking at interior, like defensive line, I need you to be. I want to optimally. I want you at least 6'2", because I want you to be able to get up, get them big paws up, block the passing lanes and line of sight and things like that. And it's hard to do if you only 6 foot. If you only 6 foot, that means you have to get through the line to get pressure. So, or unless you got somebody that's 6 foot and got a ridiculous wingspan, that can happen. So I'm looking for different things like that. And then all of that has to come under the umbrella of, can this person benefit Jalen Carter? And I'm saying that specifically because I think we got to bring pieces in with the explicit purpose of being a assistance to Jalen Carter.
Mm.
Period. He is not going nowhere. He is the defensive franchise player. Point, period, end of paragraph. So everything needs to be getting the foundation around him.
I agree with that.
We cannot have any cracks in his foundation because he has proven already that he is that good and he is worth it. So
yeah,
that's how I'm looking at it. So I like Ojomo. Can you get somebody like Ojomo, possibly as good or better? Because we're gonna do this. We're trying to rinse and repeat. So when we go in that, if we get a NASCAR package going or we just constantly rotating to keep legs fresh, I still need somebody to get in pressure. So if you can't get me no pressure, it don't matter if your legs are fresh or not. So
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to it. But to answer your question, right off the bat, I immediately go in, look at the size, look at the weight, where did they play? And then I go to film and say, okay, how did they play? I don't want to see, you was going against Kentucky and Bowling Green and, Arkansas State or something like that. How did you do against the SEC? How did you do against the Big Ten? Like stuff like that. So, yeah, I like his height. 6'3", ready to go, edge. How is his bend? And this is where you got to get into film study. Correct.
So I agree. 6'3", 257, D-end edge rusher. See, that's the thing, right? We're in this era of the NFL where edge is like a blend between D-end and off-ball linebacker.
Yep.
And it's depending on the scheme you'll call. Like BG is a classic defensive end.
Right.
But there were moments where he would play that edge role, drop back a little bit, but he's more so better going forward. Right now, these new guys come into the league, you got to be athletic. You got to be able to go forward and go backwards sometime, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, at 6'3", 257 pounds, has an 87.3 player rating. He's the 10th ranked defensive lineman in his draft class. So that includes tackles as well. Right. So the platform I'm using is NFL Draft Buzz. This is one of my favorite platforms when it comes to consolidating information, when it comes to NFL draft prospects. They do a pretty good job at putting information together. But Nick Scourton is the 10th ranked defensive lineman in his draft class. That includes D-ends, edge rushers, and D tackles. That's not a bad ranking at all. Had 5 sacks, one forced fumble, 37 tackles, 27 solo in his final season at Texas A&M. Ran a 4.7 40-yard dash. He's 20 years old. Measurables are fair. They're decent.
Mm-hmm.
40-yard dash is the strongest trait. That speed, 4.7. Right. They don't have his 10-yard split here, but he ran a 4.7 40-yard dash time. But they do a pretty good job here as well as on NFL Draft Buzz. They do a pretty good job at developing a rating for the level of competition the player faced. Right. So in Nick Scourton's case, he's faced a 78% rating in terms of opponents. So his opponents have a 78% grade. So that's pretty decent competition. That's really good competition. They grade his tackling at a 6-7%, a pass rush at 89%, run defense at 81%. They have him projected to be a late first round pick, probably borderline second round, depending on how things fall. Overall ranking, 27th. Positional ranking, 10th. Played 36 college games, over 1,400, almost 1,500 total college snaps. He was a 4-star prospect, according to 24/7 Sports and Rivals.com, a 3-star, according to ESPN. Now let's get to the scouting report summary, because they have the scouting report strengths, they have the scouting report weaknesses, and then they have the player's bio. But I always skip to the scouting report summary because it consolidates everything.
What are you looking at? The overview? I like this site. I've never been here. I like this site.
Yeah, so if you scroll go to the overview. Go to the overview tab. And if you scroll down, they consolidate a lot of the information. Yeah, so if you see the bio, strengths, and they give you a web that shows the percentiles against other versus other defensive ends. So as far as the scouting report summary, it says here, Nick Scourton's blend of size, explosiveness, and technical refinement projects him as an immediate contributor in a 4-3 defensive front, where his natural power and advanced rush setup can be maximized from a three-point stance. His proven production against top competition in both the Big Ten and SEC demonstrates the ability to win both finesse and power at the next level. The vast majority of his impact early on will come as a designated pass rusher, where his spin move and ability to convert speed to power give him a legitimate third down value from day one. So this guy, at least in year one, they're projecting him as somebody who comes in and clear and obvious pass situations. He already comes into the league with a move.
Yeah.
A legit spin move, but they do believe he could develop more counters.
It's funny that they mentioned the spin move, because I did watch a little tape on him this morning. Just pulled up a couple of YouTube highlights. That's the first thing I noticed. He has a tight spin, and I'm saying that as a running back because when you spin, when you try to teach a running back or anybody to spin, the first thing you got to do is you got to learn how to get your head around quick. If your head follows your body, you're going to end up falling over. You got to get your head around first so you can know where you're supposed to go. And then the body, where the head goes, the body will follow. His spin is so tight. He doesn't spin out wide. It's almost like he's spinning in the same spot. And it makes the offensive lineman over reach.
Like a 0-degree turn.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's the perfect term for it. And he keeps it super tight, and he gets right back on path. I did notice that. So it's funny that they mentioned that. And he made a couple offensive tackles look silly in that regard. So I definitely concur that that analysis.
Yeah, they also say as he develops his counter moves, like I mentioned, as he develops his counter moves and builds up stamina, his role should expand into an every down edge setter who can consistently pressure quarterbacks while holding a point against the run. That's important to me, right? Of course, I love an edge rusher that can get to the quarterback, but I need my edge rushers to be able to hold that edge, like to be able to hold that, because if you can't stop the run, if teams are able to constantly, get around the corner on you, then
that's a problem.
You're a liability to me. Yeah. You're a liability. So
can Huff do that? Has he played enough to make that evaluation? I'm asking because I don't know.
Okay. So I feel like I haven't seen him enough because he's been pulled off the field too often. I haven't been able to consistently see him do it. Nolan Smith, I have enough tape from Nolan Smith this year to say, despite his size disadvantage, he can set the edge. And he's done it very well. Josh Sweat, when there were games where he hasn't been able to get the sack, he's done a phenomenal job setting the edge. Josh Sweat has the size you wanted the position, has the length you wanted the position. He's like your prototype edge rusher as far as his archetype. Nolan Smith, he's a little on the smaller side, but he has speed. But he built up his power. He built up enough strength from year one to year two to be able to hold that edge and explode off the edge and put pain on the tackle. We saw what he did to the offensive lineman, from the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. He came around the edge, and he just I think he, what was that, Elgin Jenkins? He did that too. He drilled him and knocked him out, gave him a stinger. He was done for the game. So he's able to come around the edge, also able to set the edge. You know what I mean? But this is going to be an important trait for young guys coming in, right? Yeah, you have a lot of speed. Can you set that edge? Those are like the fundamentals of the game that can keep you on the football field for all three downs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, they say looking at his athletic testing, production profile, and film studies, Scourton projects as a top 40 selection who can sneak into the first round based on his youth. He's the kid's only 20 years old. He's only 20 years old, and he already comes in with a refined move. His immediate ceiling may be capped by his current limitations against double teams and need for counter move development, but his foundation suggests Pro Bowl potential by year 3. Now, here's the thing, right? With Jalen Carter on your line, you're never facing the double team because he's going to be facing it.
Exactly.
You
And
know
why
what I mean?
I don't understand why people like it ain't too many people. I don't care if you in college or the pros that's going to be able to handle double teams.
Right. I don't think
it's few and far between.
Yeah. You know, there are. It's funny when I read some of these scouting reports. There are moments where I'm like, okay, that's just a unfair criticism,
right?
Or I say, all right, that's something that's coachable, right? You pick that up on the next level. You know, like there's certain times when I read these reports, I'm saying to myself, like, you're holding something against a player that you only pick up on the next level.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And another thing,
even people on the next level struggle with that. So
yeah,
that's an unfair criticism.
Yeah, and another thing is, especially when I look at offensive linemen in particular, and we're going to look at some later on, but when I look at offensive linemen in particular, I always say to myself, let them get into an NFL program so they can put on that size, put on more muscle, get that grown man strength. Then you'll be able to really determine, okay, can this guy swing outside? Can he swing inside if need be? Like, I always like to reserve judgment. Like when I see weight with offensive linemen in particular, I always try to reserve judgment until they get into the NFL program, because one guy in particular, I think Landon Dickerson, when we drafted him, Landon Dickerson weighed, make sure I got this right here. Same thing goes for Mailata as well. When we drafted Landon Dickerson, he was 6'6", 333. And when we drafted Jordan Mailata, he was 6'8", 346. Now, today, Jordan Mailata is 6'8", 365. So Mailata was able to put on almost 20 pounds over the course of his career, being in the NFL program, right? Things of that nature. And then
with Mailata, it was a little bit easier though, because I don't think people really understood what Mailata did. When you playing rugby, he was
smaller than that though. He was even smaller than that.
But that's my point. When you playing rugby, all you're doing, rugby is basically like soccer. You running everywhere. When you get to football, you run, stop, run, stop, run, stop, run, stop, run, stop. Soccer, rugby, they are running everywhere. And then when you're done running, you got to scrum, you got to tackle. If you miss the tackle, you got to get back up because the play is still active. So it's a different level of cardio that he was doing over there. And because he was constantly running, if you haven't seen the tape by now of Mailata when he was playing rugby, you need owe it to yourself to check it out. And most people don't realize how dangerous of an athlete he is for somebody to be that big and be that fast. I'm like, put that joker at fullback and we'll never have to run another tush push as long as we live. He was that good. But to your point, you get here, you got to put on some NFL weight and you got to do things a little bit differently because you got to learn the game. And that's what he did. And he got bigger, but you don't lose that type of speed. You don't lose it. I wouldn't mind seeing them put him at tight end, to be quite honest with you. Because I believe he could run with Dallas Goedert. I believe he's that much of an athlete. Mailata could.
I don't know about now.
Nah, not now. When he first got here, though, I would line Mailata up with any receiver and or tight end in the league, and he could run with him.
No, he was a freak, man. He's a freak. It's funny. It was easy. It was easy for Mailata to put on the weight, but I don't know if many people know this or remember this. I want to say a couple of seasons ago, Lane Johnson was very transparent about his offseason. He says because remember, Lane, I think before being a tackle, wasn't Lane a quarterback or something or a tight end?
I'm not sure. I didn't know.
Lane didn't play offensive line his whole life. I think Lane was a quarterback at first, or a tight end. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was one or the other. My point is though, Lane speaks openly, or he has spoken openly in the past about how he has to continuously be diligent about tight end. Thank you, KGK. He has to be very diligent about his off season because, okay, Kyle Kokorski says QB in college. I mean QB in high school. Excuse me. So yeah, I got two people saying QB in high school. Okay. Nonetheless, though, he didn't play offensive line. He says he has to be really diligent in the off season when it comes to his off season regimen because he drops weight very easily because he's naturally not that big.
Right. He's got to work to keep it on.
He has to work to keep it on. Whereas a guy like Jordan Davis has to work to keep it off.
Exactly.
Now it's funny how our body works and how our body does the science on its own. And then we just always resort to what our natural archetype is.
Yeah, what our natural look at Kelsey. Look at how much weight Kelsey's dropped.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, and to your point, you gotta Kelsey was a running back in college.
Yeah.
Or when he came out of high school, he was a running back. His brother, Travis, was a quarterback. He was trying to go to UC to play quarterback. So Kelsey is like somebody, to your point, like your body will shrink down to its original size when you're not stuffing it full of carbs and, all the, the supplements and stuff like that. So
peep this. When Lane Johnson was drafted, he weighed 303. 303 when he was drafted. He weighs 325 now. 22 pounds of muscle added on over the course of a 10-plus year NFL career. And he has to work to keep that on. Like he says it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Because if he relaxes, he will shrink.
Yeah. You don't see many people as big as he is with a six-pack.
That part.
You don't see it.
You don't see that.
And a lot of people forget that a lot of his weight is because he's 6'5", 6'6".
Brandon Brooks was the same way. Brandon Brooks was somebody, he would shrink. He was one of those guys that was that big but had a six-pack.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, let's get into the other top 30 visit. Another guy from Texas A&M. This guy, talented brother, goes by the name of Shamar Turner, not to be confused with Shamar Stewart. So Shamar Turner, 6'3", 290 pounds. This guy's a tweener. He's a tweener. He played edge in college, played DN in college, but he's likely going to shift to the interior in the NFL, depending on, probably scheme specific. But he's somebody who's been a tweener for the most part. He's kind of that. He's taller. He's taller than Moro Ojomo and Milton Williams. But as far as like the weight goes, it's distributed a little differently. But he's a guy that's considered a tweener. He's the 24th ranked defensive lineman in this draft class. Again, that's edge rushers and D tackles combined. Ran a 4.8 40-yard dash. Measurables are really solid. Again, ran a 4.8 at 296 pounds or 290 pounds.
Man, every time I see
remarkable
somebody that big running a 4.8, I always go back to, like, that's why we need to keep Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis ran a 4.76.
That's insane.
At 300 and how much? 360 or whatever it was?
Like, I think it was like maybe 330, 340.
Ridiculous, dude. Ridiculous.
Let me double check.
To be able to move that now, when you got a kid that's at his prime, physically, moving like that, and you want to put more on him?
341. So Jordan Davis was 6'6", 341. And you said he ran a 4.7, correct? Yep, 4.78.
4.78?
Yep, 4.78 with a 1.68 10-yard split.
Oof.
His athletic score, according to NFL.com and NFL Next Gen Stats, his athleticism score was a 93. He in the 22 combine, in the 22 NFL draft, the combine, he was ranked second. He had the second best athleticism score. See, the thing is, with all that athleticism, my biggest thing with Jordan Davis was, and I think the Eagles would have to admit this, despite the athletic traits he has that we love so much, he's somebody that hasn't quite lived up fully to that draft stock. And I like Jordan Davis a lot, and I don't want people to get it misconstrued like I don't want him here. I want Jordan Davis here. I want us to be able to realize what that can be.
Right.
But his fifth-year option is here, and the Eagles.
Jordan Davis is a special move. Jordan Davis, like you play the video games, and you gotta build up the special move, but once you use it, it's gone.
If he can develop as a pass rusher a little bit more, if he can be somebody that can get you between 4 to 6 sacks a season, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, but it goes back to what we were just talking about. He really has to work to keep his weight down. If he could be like 310, 315, he would be unstoppable. If him and Jalen Carter were the same size, can you picture that? Because he's strong as an ox, but he just that's his genetic makeup.
So he came in at 341. They have him listed now at 336. Jordan Davis 336. Jalen Carter, they have him listed at 314.
Right.
If Jordan Davis could get down to 325 at least, 320.
Just below 330. Just below 330.
That's the thing.
Like,
he would, how fat, like he ran a 4.78 at 341.
341, bro.
If he can get down to the 320s, if he can get sub 330,
it sounds like it's not a lot.
No, but it is when you're that big.
But it is. Anybody that's ever went shopping with your wife at the grocery store and you got that one big ass heavy bag, pick up that heavy bag of groceries and then run to the car.
Listen, I was working out with my kettlebells last night, and I was doing lunges with them. You know what I mean? Had a kettlebell in each hand, and each kettlebell was 10 pounds, so I had 20 extra pounds on me. It's a difference.
Big difference.
Big difference. You know what I mean? So it's not easy to just drop that. When you're that big or naturally big, it requires a hell of a transition with your diet.
Yeah, and if your genetic makeup is to be that big, you are that big. It's very difficult to keep it off. You can get rid of it, but it's very difficult to keep it off because your genetic makeup tells you what you want to eat when you want to eat it, and just like any V8 engine, you got to keep the right fuel in that bad boy.
Yeah.
And it burns fuel fast. I remember that play last year where he tracked down somebody.
It was Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, and then we didn't see. He was no more good for the rest of the game.
It was the rest of the season. It was the rest of the season.
He was done after that. Like
when he hawked him down,
you gave up the ghost.
He pushed him out because if he doesn't get there, he gets to first down.
Yeah.
He was able to cut him off and get him out of bounds. When Jordan Davis hit that ground, he rolled over on his back and he stayed there. He gave
up the ghost, bro. Gave up the ghost on that one. And that was because I remember Seth telling him like, bro, you got to be able to get that weight under control because you still young, you still get baby weight, as goofy as that sounds, but that's very hard for somebody like him to be able to shed that weight and keep it off. Because every time he thinking about eating something, he gonna gain a pound.
Yeah. Now we'll say playoffs, like everybody's mentioning, playoffs. He had a really strong playoff performance.
Yeah,
like he had a really good playoff run, really good. Everybody did. You know what I mean? But just speaking about him, he had a really good playoff run. He had 2 sacks throughout the course of the playoffs, one in the NFC Championship, one in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? But it's so funny. One sack from the 2024 season, and then we can continue on to Shamar Turner. But one sack from Jordan Davis that probably is one of the funniest sacks I've seen is the sack he got on Derek Carr in week 3. When Jordan Davis broke through that line, because I think it was a play action.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Carr ran a play action, so his back is to the defensive line. Jordan Davis breaks through when Derek Carr's eyes turned to look upfield. All he saw was a shadow, and he saw Jordan Davis is like this, like a bear, a grizzly bear. Derek Carr just literally just crumbled. He didn't even try to dodge him. He just said, "You know what? I'm just gonna fold and take this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take this." Like you see quarterbacks, try to shift, try to make a move.
He ain't want that smoke.
He's like, "Nah, plays that."
He ain't want that smoke, dude.
Plays that. So when you see a guy of that size coming at, that's why Jordan Davis, his potential, and I know potential is a dangerous word in life.
Yeah, it is, but but everybody got it.
His potential is uncanny. Uncanny.
You can't argue with physics, bro. You can't argue with physics. When you got somebody that fast, that big, coming in the opposite direction, most times you are going to lose that battle.
Man,
I'm with you. I want to keep him here at all costs.
I like him a lot, man. Hopefully his representation, they're reasonable at the negotiation table, because I have a feeling the Eagles don't pick up the option and they try to negotiate a cheaper deal.
Because if he goes anywhere else, you ain't gonna hear nothing else from him.
That's what I think. Kaka Korski had a super chat earlier. He says, Tone and Coach, what do you guys think of JT Tuipulotu in the second round? He's a really good prospect. Really good, talented guy out of Ohio State, right? Really, really talented player. He was a 5-star athlete based on from all publications, Rivals.com, 24/7 Sports, ESPN. He was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. He's lived up to the expectation. I think he had double-digit sacks last year too. So he's a good player. He's a real good player. Thank you for the super chat, Kyle. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Let's see. So Shamar Turner, 6'3", 290. They have him labeled as a versatile defensive lineman. Probably going to float in that interior movement inside and outside. Very strong 40-yard dash, ran a 4.8. And again, Jordan Davis ran a 4.78 at 341. This guy's 290, only cracking a 4.8. So just keep that in mind.
He got a motor too, man. Turner?
Yes. He's
got a motor.
He's
got a mean streak to him.
Yeah. He's a guy that's been a 4-star and a 5-star athlete, according to ESPN 24/7 and Rivals.com, respectively. Average rating of opposition offense he's faced is a 79%. So he's faced some pretty stiff competition. Tackling can improve. Has a 40% tackling rating. His pass rush and his run defense is a 71%, respectively.
Yeah, he does a lot of side tackling. Like he'll get there, but it's almost like he don't square up and hit you in the chest.
Yeah.
He basically pulls you down, but he does a very good job of jabbing. He's got a good explosion out of his stance. And I mean, there's things that obviously Vic can work on and Cliff Hurts can kind of fine tune, but I like his motor, man. I like his motor. He likes to get to the ball.
Yeah. Projected to be a 3rd-round pick. College games played. He played in 44 college games. Put up just over 1,600 college snaps. His player comparisons are Braden Fisk. Fisk, he got drafted by the Rams. Zach Pickens and Vilimini Fehoko. Excuse me. So moving down to his scouting report summary, and this is Shamar Turner, D lineman out of Texas A&M. Yeah, this is a little clunky. Let me clean this up. All right. Shamar Turner projects as a scheme-specific contributor with the potential to develop into a more impactful player. His versatility to play in multiple positions along the defensive line will be attractive to teams employing multiple fronts. Turner's blend of size, strength, and athleticism suggests he could thrive in a system that utilizes him as a movable chess piece, exploiting favorable matchups. Okay. Versatile, move up and down the defensive line. Scheme specific, though. But in the NFL, Turner's immediate impact may come as a rotational player, particularly in passing situations where his quickness and penetration ability can be maximized. His development as a run defender will be crucial for earning more snaps and becoming a 3-down player. Teams running hybrid 3-4-4-3 schemes may find Turner particularly appealing as his skill set allows for alignment flexibility. While Turner's physical tools are evident, his success at the next level will hinge on refining his technique and developing a more nuanced approach to the game. If he can harness his raw abilities and marry them with improved pad level and a deeper pass rush arsenal, Turner could outperform his draft position and become a valuable defensive weapon in the right system. So it sounds to me this guy, talented traits, but needs a lot of coaching.
That's a big if. If he can harness his raw abilities, that's a big if.
You're right. You're right. You know, he's not as refined as Nick Scourton. He doesn't come in with a move or not as disciplined, but and not as disciplined with pad level, not as disciplined with on run defense, right?
Right.
See somebody that's a little bit of a work in progress here. He's somebody that's his success in the NFL will gravely depend on where he is drafted.
Right.
Gravely depend on where he's drafted.
You know what though? It goes back to what you said earlier, man. It's where and who's there wherever he goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to. Because how many kids like this are we going to see that the potential talent is there? Mm-hmm. Do you have a coach to pull it out of?
That part. That's
what it comes down to, man. I'm kind of over here on the side. I just started another mock, and at pick 32, you got Walter Nolan, but James Pierce Jr. is still available. I'm taking James Pierce. So take that edge from Tennessee.
It's funny, Walter Nolan, he fell to me on my first mock draft. I got him in the first round, and then I was able to get Princely Ullman in the second round. I was able to get both Ole Miss defenders in the first and second round. And that Ole Miss defensive line was one of the best. They were one of the best defenses in football in college.
Do you think Howie stays at 32?
No, I don't.
Is he going up or down?
He's going up. I think he goes up.
You gonna get rid of some of them picks?
Can't take them with you.
Can't take them with you. Get rid about 3, move up about 15 spots.
Can't take them with you.
So if he does move up, who's he trying to get? I guess that's the question. Who?
I got this sneaky. If he stays, he's drafting. If he stays, he's drafting the defensive lineman. If he moves up, he's getting a safety.
Really?
I know it sounds. A lot of people have been like, "Really, Tone?" I listen.
I don't know, because if he gets a safety, you got to play him. So the whole Sidney Brown thing is out the door.
I hear you. I hear you, man. But those,
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Those top 2 safeties products, Malachi Starks and Nick Emenwari, those guys are freaks, man.
Yeah,
those guys are really good.
Yeah,
and look, before we drafted Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, we knew we needed corners, but we all were like, hey, Keely Ringo, what's the next step for him? They drafted 2 corners back to back.
Yeah,
knowing they got Keely on the roster, knowing they're high on him still. They drafted 2 corners, first and second round. That tells you everything you need. That tells you, like, listen, yeah, we like you, but we're going to always make sure we hedge our bet. We're gonna always make sure we got enough bullets in the gun. So, if you traded CJ, you haven't signed or brought in any safety in free agency. You only have 4 safeties on your roster. It's Reed, Blankenship. You only have 1 legitimate starter on your roster. You have 1.
Facts. That makes sense. I'm
paying attention. I'm not only paying attention to the moves they made. I'm paying attention to the moves they didn't make.
Ones they didn't make. Yeah, that makes sense, bro. That makes sense.
And one can argue, they didn't do that because they have confidence in Sidney Brown. I can argue, although they have confidence in Sidney Brown, they didn't do it because they didn't bring anybody in because they know they're going to draft one. And look, even if they don't draft one in the first round, they're getting a safety in those first 3 rounds.
Yeah, and I'm talking out of bias too. So I like Sidney Brown.
I like him too.
So I want to see him get his opportunity, but that doesn't mean Howie Roseman is not on the job doing what he's supposed to do. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and and Howie's like he's the type. If I got a chance to get a legitimate player, a guy that can start day one, that could do everything, versatile, elite size, because Sidney Brown doesn't have elite size at the position. He's athletic, he hits hard, he's powerful, but he doesn't have unique or elite size at the position. Nicky Minwari, Malachi Starks, those guys are like 6'2", 6'3". Rangy.
So you think they're gonna draft early? They're gonna go up to get a safety.
Not too far. Then they're not gonna push it. Okay, I'll put it this way. This kind of takes me to my mock draft real quick. So I did a mock draft on Friday. This is my second mock draft 2.0. The Eagles have the 32nd overall pick, right?
Yeah. 32 and 64.
Right. So what I did in that first round, I was gauging the draft. I was letting the picks fall. And if I'm not mistaken, let me look at the draft order real quick before I look at the draft order in the first round. Give me 1 second. Okay, so here was the draft order, right? So the picks were falling, and we got to Pittsburgh's pick, right? Pittsburgh has the 21st overall pick. And once we got around that point, I said, okay, one of those teams, Chargers or Minnesota, because 22nd overall is Chargers, 23rd is Green Bay, 24th is Minnesota, 25th is Houston, 26th is Rams. So I let it fall some more. Chargers picked their player. I knew the Green Bay Packers weren't picking a safety.
Mm-hmm.
They have Xavier. What's the dude's name? McKinney. They got McKinney. So I knew since they had McKinney, they weren't drafting safety. Right now, Minnesota. I was saying to myself, could they pick a safety? I tried to trade Minnesota first to move up to 24. I tried to trade Minnesota first. They were driving a hard bargain. So I gambled. I let Minnesota pick. They chose a corner. I said, okay, stop it. I stopped the draft. Houston's next at 25. Houston's at 25, Rams at 26. I said the Rams are going to choose a safety. So I managed to get a deal done in Houston. Some people will say I gave up too much, but this is what I gave up to move up to that 25th spot, to get ahead of the Rams, who were at pick 26. In order to get pick 25, I traded my 32nd overall pick. I traded my 134th overall pick, which was, let me make sure I got this right here, which is a 4th rounder. I traded pick 161, which was the 5th rounder. And I traded a 2026 2nd rounder. So essentially, I did a pick swap and gave them an additional 3 picks. 2 picks in the current draft and the 2nd rounder in the 2026 draft. I gave them We swapped the pick, and I gave them 3 additional picks to move up to pick 25. And I was able to get the South Carolina safety, Nick Ward.
Man, listen.
Some people felt like I gave him too much.
Moving
but when I did,
and shaking.
But when I did the science on the player and thought about how dynamic he was, I felt like it was worth it. Malachi Starks is already taken. But Nick Ward, when you look him up,
wrong answers, bro.
He's a player.
Answers. Yeah,
he is a player when you look him up. So, I again, that was my first time doing a trade in the mock draft. So again, I wanted to play around with it. It's no stakes aren't high, so I'm just playing around with it, seeing what happens. And I had the Eagles trading up to get I had the Eagles trading up to pick 125 with Houston to get South Carolina safety Nick Ward, and Houston ultimately picked Walter Nolan at pick 32. For some reason, Walter Nolan keeps in every mock draft I've seen.
He keeps popping up. He's
at pick 32. He's going to be there.
Yeah,
he's going to be there.
This when it gets fun, man. This when it gets fun.
Yeah, it gets really, really interesting, man. Really, really interesting. And then round 2, I stayed at pick 64. I drafted Harold Fannin Jr., tight end out of Bowling Green.
Yeah, he popped up on the last mock I did before the show started. And I ended up not picking him because I like the guy from Oregon better.
You're talking about I know who you're talking about.
Fanigan, I don't like his size. To me, he's too small.
He's too small to be
Terrence
Ferguson. You're talking about Terrence Ferguson.
Terrence Ferguson, yeah. Fanigan is too small to be a tight end in the league.
Yeah, Fannin. 6'4", 230.
230 is not big enough, bro. If I need you to block, nah. 230? You got to bring a little bit more ass than that. I got to have you at least 240 to 250. And Ferguson or Arroyo. And I've only done one. Now, mind you, I've only done about 4 to 5 mocks. I've only had one draft where I managed to get Mason Taylor.
To your point, though, about Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, when I drafted him, some people felt like you. They felt like, can he block though? Yeah, he's dynamic and he's dynamic as a receiver. He can catch, he can run the routes, he can find a soft spot in the zone, he can get open, he can beat safeties, he can beat linebackers. He's good. He had an electric season at tight end, over 1,500 receiving yards. He was dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But blocking, can he be consistent there? His scouting report indicated that if he has potential, there's that word again. He has a chance to be a steady blocker, not elite like a George Kittle or, you know what I mean, but he can do it if coached up enough. But again, like you said, the size being 6'3", 6'4", 230, when the rest of his class or the rest of the top tight ends, they're 245 and above.
And also look at what we need him for. Look at what we need him for. How many times did we go over tapes during the season? And I was like, come on, Calcaterra, you got to do better than that, bro.
Now, to your point, right? To your point, because again, that was my second draft. And I chose tight end in the second round in my second draft. In my first mock draft, though, I didn't do any trades. I just stayed put.
Yeah.
Instead of going tight end in the second round, I went tight end in the third.
Yeah.
And I chose Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Gunnar Helm, 250.
Good size.
6'5".
There you go.
Has the same, if not better, route running ability, the ability to get open as Harold Fannin Jr. He may not be as fast,
right?
But he can get open, knows how to find a soft spot. One of the most reliable hands out of his tight end draft class, and can block. Still developing as that, but can block better than Harold Fannin.
I just need somebody that can. I don't want to lose the battle of physics, especially when you got Saquon and Jalen Hurts. You gotta have somebody that can that can handle that edge rusher. You have to, or he Jalen gonna be looking like Caleb Williams back there. That's something that is a must. Now, with Calcaterra and Jack Stoll and Dallas Goedert wasn't always the best. Because Dallas Goedert had a couple of games I was like, bruh, you got to do better than that.
Yeah.
So, and now
he's had better seasons as a blocker. He's
right.
had better seasons.
And let's just go ahead and throw this out there. We might not have a tush push next year. So it's even more important to have a stalwart on the end of that line of scrimmage that can either catch a pass or can handle that linebacker coming off the edge. We got to have somebody that can do that. Because that's going to come into play.
It's funny you say that about as far as the tush push goes, and making sure we got the right personnel to make sure we can counteract if we don't have it. I believe, although Howie Roseman has been very adamant about keeping the play in the game, I think Howie Roseman foresaw this play coming up at owners' meetings.
Bruh, A.J. Dillon.
That's why he brought in A.J. Dillon.
Man, listen.
And he brought back Ben Van Sumeren, but signed him and listed him as a fullback.
Yes.
I think he foresaw that they potentially may lose out on this play. He wanted to make sure he brought back enough beef to the house.
But see, here's the thing with the shove. Here's the thing. It all depends on how they word it. Because clearly they're going to change the rule. Goodell, if he don't like it, it's going to get changed.
Because the reason they tabled it, one of the reasons they tabled it is because the Packers, they're giving the Packers another chance to reword their case.
They're going to reword it, and it's going to be about player safety and all that other kind of bullshit. But to me, the important piece is, how are they going to word it? Can you or can you not push the quarterback? Probably not. However, can the quarterback push forward? Because that's all you need to do. You line it up the same way. The offensive linemen do the same thing. The only difference is when you line up that tight end, tight off Jalen Hurts' either left side or right side, now he becomes, now for me, I'm automatically putting A.J. Dillon in that spot. Not A.J. Brown, not Kenny Gainwell. A.J. Dillon is in that spot. He is going to block the end man on the line of scrimmage outside the tackle. And that's where Jalen Hurts is going. If you look at every time we run the shove, when Jalen Hurts slid to his left, we usually got anywhere between 2 and 3 yards on that play, sometimes even more. Because the way we line up and the way defenses adjust to what they're looking at, the gap is always on the left side. The only thing we got to do, if you can't push them, the only thing you got to do is make sure that guy on your left, who that fullback is, he goes first. That's the difference. And you might have to do something different, because now guys jumping over the top, that comes into play a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I watched that game, that Cincinnati game and the Jaguars game. Those were the two teams that legitimately stopped the play.
Right.
And I figured out, how did they do that? What they did was they got a piece of Jalen before he could slide to the left or before he could get low enough. The problem these guys were making, and I don't want to give too much of the strategy, they kept jumping over the top rather than, you know how, well, no, not necessarily in the gap. You know how, like, say, the center guard and then in the nose and in that tackle, they all got their helmets 4 inches above the dirt, right?
Right.
So if a linebacker is jumping over the top, you can't jump over the top. You got to jump even. You got to jump parallel with that nose guard or that defensive tackle. You better be about 4 yards above him. Don't jump up, jump even. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit Jalen and either knock him back or knock him down.
Mm.
That's how you stop it.
Hey, listen, obviously they're not teaching that in the film room because
don't nobody listen to us, man.
Because they complaining about it in the owners meetings. Shout out to Carlos Rosado with the super chat.
What up, Carlos?
Coach Tone, I have no idea what direction Howie will go in, who he will draft. It also depends on how the big board goes, but a big trade will go down, in my opinion. Yeah, Howie Roseman is known for making trades on draft night. I think last draft he broke the record for most trades in the draft before. Yep. Was it 2023 or 2024 draft? I can't remember, but he broke the record. I think it was 2024. Anyway, yeah, Carlos, shout out to you for the super chat, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Carlos.
I Sean 101 with the 1999. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you, big dog. He says, "Sup, fellas? If Howie targets, if who Howie targets aren't available in the first round, he will trade back to do more trading up, either second or third or fourth round. Remember, Howie has a lot of money to spend next few years. He won't have to pay first round money 2025. That's an interesting point. We talked about that too a while back. How there's a chance that he can trade back to avoid paying first round level money.
Yes, I remember we talked about this. I don't know if you heard us. I believe it was last.
You know
week.
who did that? You know who did that in the last draft? The Bills.
Yeah,
the Bills were at pick 32, I think, or 30. I think they were at pick. They were the last pick of the draft. I think for some reason they were the last pick, and they traded just out of the first round. Xavier Worthy went to the Chiefs.
Yes,
because everybody was like, "Why do you need a receiver? Why are you trading back? Xavier Worthy's right there." And they selected Keon Coleman, which I believe, despite the things he's dealt with injury wise, I believe that was the better move.
I agree.
Because, and again, this is not me saying Keon Coleman is better than Xavier Worthy. I feel like in Buffalo, you need somebody that got more skin on their bones than Xavier Worthy.
Keon Coleman is better than Xavier Worthy in the system that he is in. Xavier Worthy is better than Keon Coleman in the system in Kansas City. So they both win.
I agree with that. I agree with that, but I also think they looked at it from the perspective of the type. I feel like difference. I feel like, okay, they normally say you draft for your division, right?
Right.
You draft for your division. You also draft for where you play, and you want guys. I just feel like Xavier Worthy's style doesn't even fit Buffalo football. The weather, the scheme, like it doesn't fit.
Stop at the weather. That's because that's what I'm looking at it. You got somebody that can run like Xavier Worthy. He needs the track to be optimal. He can't run like that in the snow. He can't run like that in the rain and the ice.
Yeah.
So
now, granted, Kansas City gets cold. Kansas City gets snow. Don't get it twisted. But but Buffalo is a different beast when it comes to that.
Buffalo is a very different beast. And
that's right there next to Lake Erie, right there.
Back to Eyeshine, don't forget, all of these moves are for Howie Roseman to make room so he can sign Jalen Carter next year. Don't get it twisted.
And again, and just to make sure I bring it full circle, they traded back. They could have taken Worthy. They decided to trade back top of the second round to get Coleman. They got the receiver they wanted, and it's paying them less money.
Yep.
So, yeah. Shout out to Eyeshine. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. So let's see where we are at time. We got about an hour and a half. How much more time you got, big dog?
I got about 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do one more. Let's do one more player from this top 30 visit. We can go offense this time. We can look at the offensive lineman they brought in. Let me make sure I got this right here. His name is Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia, guard. Dylan Fairchild. Dylan Fairchild.
Dylan Gabriel, Mason Fairchild, Dylan Stoner.
Here it is, Dylan Fairchild, Georgia.
Come on,
so are you spelling Fairchild correctly? DYLAN Fair FAIR child.
I spelled his first name wrong. There we go.
So Dylan Fairchild. Let's bring him up on screen.
Anybody from Georgia, sign him. Just sign him. Just go ahead and sign him. Georgia, Alabama, go ahead and sign him.
All right, so we got Dylan Fairchild here, offensive lineman, 6'5", 6'5", 318.
Nice, good size.
Yeah, very good size at the guard spot. I think good enough size.
Wait a minute, he a guard?
You beating me to it.
Bro, when did all these guards become 6'5" and 6'6"? When did this happen?
I think he even has good enough size to swing outside. If once you get into the NFL program and you get into Jeff Stoutland University, he's going to cross train you. And he's going to look at your size and say, "Let's see if we can get you at tackle as well. Let's see what happens."
His feet have to be phenomenal.
6'5", 318. Now here's the reason why he may be a guard instead of a tackle, despite the size, the arm length.
Oh, what's his spread?
33 inches. His wingspan is 81 inches. The wingspan is strong. But the arms individually, 33 inches. they're fair. They're
Okay.
fair. But I think he still has potential to swing outside. 6'5", 318, puts on about maybe 10 to 15 pounds in the NFL program. That'll put him at 328, 333, something like that. That's a and he ran a 5'1",
right.
Has a 111 broad jump. He has good feet. Has quick feet.
I like his hands.
Yeah, where are they?
Hands.
Yeah.
I got my other screen up and I'm looking at his NFL highlight tape. And the one thing I noticed, there's been a couple of plays where they got him. The defense is trying to extend, and he does that, like get off me, and then re-engages. So
he knows how he resets well.
Yes, he knows how to get hands off of him, and he's got pretty good lateral movement. Like, like when you backstepping, and then they take, the defensive lineman chooses a side, you got to be able to go with him. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it says here, this guy, the average rating of opposing defense that he's played against is 75%.
Yeah.
75% average rating. So he's going up against some top tier, defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the SEC, bro.
So you're going to get that. His pass blocking grade is a 93%. That's elite. Run blocking grade 77. Could stand to improve there. His draft projection is 4th round. His overall ranking is one. He's a top 200 player. He's just on the cusp of being a top 100 player.
Yeah.
His position ranking.
If you're that close, you are. I look at it like that. This is going to be 101. That's plus or minus 5. You got biased people.
That part.
So that's close enough, man. Just put him in the number.
Yeah, and they even say when it comes to this guy,
of snaps.
They even say when it comes to this guy, he played with guys like Jared Wilson and Tate Ratledge, who are also going to be in this draft as well from Georgia, and they don't consider him they don't consider Fairchild to be on their level, but he's still rated pretty highly amongst his peers, regardless, though. But nonetheless,
I like it.
You're projected to go 4th round. Position ranking, he's the 18th best offensive lineman, and again, that includes offensive tackles, guards, and centers. So for him to be top 20 amongst guards, tackles, and centers, that's pretty damn good,
dude. That's a Vic Fangio or a Jeff Stoutland special
for sure. 34 college games, just over 1,400 college snaps played.
1,400 snaps. That's a lot of ball.
Yeah, a 4-star athlete, respectively, between ESPN, 24/7 Sports, and Rivals.com. So he's pretty fairly rated. He was fairly rated coming into college. Let's see here. So when it comes to his scouting report summary, we have Fairchild enters the NFL as a high upside guard prospect whose elite pass protection skills give him a solid foundation to build upon. The tenacity and technical prowess he developed through his wrestling background.
Nope. He got great feet. You already know. If he wrestled, he got great feet. Draft him.
I like that.
Full stop.
Brandon Brooks, he took up I can't remember the exact art it was. I think it was Tai Chi, or I think it was
probably Taekwondo.
Brandon Brooks Taekwondo is more so feet related. Right. But he took up a martial art basically. I'm talking about with the hands though. He took up a martial art. What's those posts where the martial, it's like the wooden post has the posts that poke out and they kind of function as arms.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what that's called. Yeah.
But Brandon Brooks basically took up a martial art to work on his hands. So nonetheless, the tenacity and technical prowess Fairchild developed through his wrestling background shine through in pass sets where his advanced understanding of leverage and weight distribution consistently frustrates interior rushers. I like that. Wrestling is all about weight distribution.
Yeah.
His impressive athletic testing and fluid movement skills suggest untapped potential in zone blocking schemes, though he'll need development time to fully unlock his capabilities in the run game. Jeff Stalin to get that right.
Man.
Smart offensive line coaches will see a player whose raw tools and competitive mindset create an appealing canvas for technical refinement. Look for Fairchild to start his career as a rotational guard while he adjusts to NFL-level stunts and blitz packages, with clear potential to develop into a reliable starter by year 2. Wow. His ceiling will be determined by how quickly he can process complex defensive fronts, but the foundation is there for a long-term NFL starter at guard. I like it. I like it, man.
Bro, he's a wrestler. That's all you need to know. He's a wrestler. That brother knows how to move his feet, how to get his feet in the right position, and how to adjust his body into some uncomfortable situations. Period. That's all you need to know. If he wrestled at that size, sign him.
Man. So there you have it, you guys. Those are a portion of the top 30 visits that the Philadelphia Eagles brought in. As a reminder, they brought in cornerback Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State and also brought in cornerback Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. We didn't get the chance to get to those guys, but we did get to Dylan Fairchild. We did get to Nick Scourton, and we did get to Shamar Taylor, both of those guys out of Texas A&M. Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia. So we focused on the trenches today, you guys. And we appreciate you for locking in on the show. It means a lot to us, goes a long way. It's been a fun show. We got into a lot. We uncovered a lot as well. So make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to my man, Coach Markus at Pro Fan Talk. Make sure you guys go check out the dope interviews he does, man. He brings on a lot of Eagles veterans, a lot of former Eagles alumni. Man, Markus is just on a tear right now. He's been covering March Madness. He's been covering college hoops. Just phenomenal content creator, you guys. So make sure you guys lock in with him. And also make sure you guys are subscribed to Chalk It Up Sports. It means a lot to me, you guys. So any final words, Markus, before we cut the sport?
Man. Let's not forget that Howie Roseman, let's say he doesn't trade anything and we get the 8 picks. He still got, 12 more for next year? So he can still make all of the picks and still have a whole bunch of stuff to trade for next year. So, this is Howie season. He's the Wizard of Philadelphia, and I got supreme trust in Howie. Also, side note, check me out at 3:00 today because I will be live streaming the national championship game between South Carolina and UConn, pulling for Dawn Staley, Philly's own.
Yep.
So I like Paige Beckers. Don't get it twisted. I like AZ Fudd. I definitely like Sarah Strong. But I got to pull for my girl from Philly. Got to represent.
I feel you on that, big dog. And Brother Little Time Works left us with a super chat. He says this year's draft appears to have a talent shelf that kicks in around 35 to 40. After that, there's a noticeable drop off. Trade back with caution. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's also position specific as well.
Absolutely.
So there may be a drop off with particular positions. Like I think this draft class is pretty deep as far as D-line and tight end for sure. But I know
D-line, edge, and tight ends.
Yeah. There is a drop off with safety for sure. There is a drop off with. I heard this running back class is deep.
Yeah, running backs are deep.
Yeah, so
running backs are deep, and thanks to Saquon, he resetting the market
for sure, man. For sure, we're gonna get all those guys paid. So shout out to Relative Time Works. We appreciate y'all for locking in on the content. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We will be back next week, next Sunday, with another live stream at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, and 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Wherever you are in the world, the content is available to you. Smash that like button. Subscribe to Pro Fan Talk. Subscribe to Chalk It Up Sports. And you guys have been tuned in to the Eagles Offseason show. Fly, Eagles, fly, y'all. And we'll catch y'all next time.
Go Birds.
In the city of Philly, where the birds take flight, Eagle swag on the rise each and every night. Tone and Markus got the scoop ready to ignite. From the lanes of South Street to the Broad Street lights, dashing like a running back, hitting every play. 9 guys in the zone, never led astray. Talking touchdowns, talking game day. Huddle around the mic, hear what they gotta say. Fly like an eagle, soaring in the sky. Tone and Markus always standing by, bringing the heat, call it do or die. squad, hear the battle cry. Fly like an eagle soars in the sky. Tone and Markus always standing by. Bringing their heat, call it do or die. Philly squad, hear the battle cry.